Now you have a good sense of the interface for Final Cut Pro X. Let's take a quick look at Preferences. Preferences for Final Cut Pro X can be found directly under the words Final Cut Pro in the drop-down menus. The keyboard shortcut to get to your Preferences menu is Command, comma. Now, for some of you, these preferences may seem a little bit confusing if you've never edited with a nonlinear editor. And for some of you who've worked with nonlinear editors before, they'll make a lot of sense. What I suggest is follow along with the movie. Later on, you may want to revisit this movie after you've learned how to use Final Cut Pro X. There's not a lot of preferences to adjust in Final Cut Pro X, but we're going to step through some of them in detail. The first one is Show Detail Trimming Feedback. If you're used to editing with two windows, a viewer and a canvas, and when you do some edits such as slip edits and slide edits, which we'll learn about in later movies, checking Show Detail Trimming Feedback can be incredibly useful. Position playhead after edit operation basically means as soon as you put a clip into your timeline, the playhead will jump to the end of the clip, preparing you to edit the next clip into your timeline. Show Reference Waveforms is another great preference to check. If you change the volume of a clip, the waveform, or the little graphic you see that represents the audio wave, will actually grow or shrink as you make the volume louder or softer. With this box checked, you'll see a ghosted image of the original waveform, so you have a reference to see how much louder or how much softer you've made it. When you bring a still image or a still graphic into Final Cut Pro X, it needs to know how long to make that graphic. By default, the duration is 4 seconds. However, if you know you're going to need longer or shorter clips, you can go ahead and adjust this number so when you import your stills, they're the proper length. Now don't panic. If you bring in a still that's only 4 seconds long and you need it to be 6, 7, or 8 seconds long, Final Cut Pro allows you to stretch that out as long as you need. The length of a transition by default is 1 second in duration, but a lot of editors like to pick up the pace of their program and have all their transitions be quicker, such as a ½ second or a 1/3 second. You can make the change here so whenever you put a transition in, it's the duration that you want. Once again, like still images, you're not stuck with the default duration. You can always make your transitions longer or shorter with a click of the mouse. The next setting, Apply Transitions using Full Overlap or Available Media, is critical. If you're coming from, say, iMovie, you're used to full overlap, which means if you didn't have enough handles or media between two clips, it will always give you a full transition, just shortening the duration of your program to make up for the missing handles. If you're used to editing in a traditional nonlinear editor, you'll want to check Available Media. This will only use the extra media that you have before and after a clip for your transitions. So the duration of your transition may not be the full 1 second if you only have, say, 12 frames of information to do your dissolve. Again, all of this would become clearer as you go through the movies, and you may want to refer back to this movie once you've got more experience with Final Cut Pro. The next section we're going to talk about is playback preferences. Now, if you're already familiar with nonlinear editing, you know what a render file is. So for those of you, I'll explain this checkbox. If background rendering is turned on, as you edit, Final Cut will use unused CPU cycles to render your program. The beauty of it is you can determine how long Final Cut will wait before it starts the background render. If you're playing with an edit and moving transitions or filters, you may want to set that to 15, 20, or even 30 seconds, so it doesn't keep rendering while you're making decisions. For now, the default settings in the playback area can be left as they are. We'll explore some of these in more detail as we start importing and editing our project. The import preferences are critical, but we'll explore the details and the benefits of whether things should be checked or unchecked in the importing movie of the course. As we go through the movies and you get more experience with Final Cut Pro X, you'll learn which preferences are important for you to change and which preferences are important for you to keep as their defaults.